Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to the English Pod Zone, where English learning meets real-life inspiration. I'm Emma, and today's episode is truly special. Today's story isn't just about Apple or iPhones. It's about how vision, failure, and raw determination can change the world forever. We're diving deep into the unbelievable journey of Steve Jobs, a college dropout who got fired from the company he started, only to come back and build a legacy that reshaped 6 entire industries and inspired millions of people around the globe. But this episode is more than just a biography. It's more than just facts and dates. This is about the mindset behind innovation, the comeback after rejection, the quiet moments that shaped a loud legacy. So grab your headphones, get comfortable, because this story will move you, it will teach you, and it will challenge you to think bigger than you ever have before. Stay with me until the very end. I promise it will shift the way you see success forever. Let's begin. When people think of Steve Jobs, they often picture the black turtleneck, the sleek Apple stage, the iPhone reveal that changed the world. But before the world knew his name, before the millions, before the MacBooks, before the headlines, there was a garage, a cluttered little space in Los Altos, California. That's where it all started. Jobs wasn't a conventional genius. He didn't build computers like his partner, Steve Wozniak. He wasn't a code wizard. He couldn't write complex software. But what he had was vision. Unshakable, electrifying vision. The kind of vision that pulls the future into the present, whether the world is ready or not. As a teenager, Steve was rebellious. He was intense. He was spiritual. And he was endlessly curious. He dropped out of college. But here's the beautiful part. He kept dropping into the classes that fascinated him. Classes like calligraphy. That class, that simple calligraphy class, would later influence the typography and design of the very first Macintosh computer. That's how Steve's mind worked. He connected dots that others didn't even see. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. In 1976, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne founded Apple in that now famous garage. Their first product was the Apple IIe, a bare circuit board that Wozniak designed and Jobs knew how to sell. Jobs had a magnetic way of making people believe. Investors, partners, customers, everyone. He wasn't just selling technology, he was selling a dream, a future, a new way of thinking. They weren't just building computers, they were building a revolution. But here's the thing about revolutions, they're messy. The early days of Apple were chaotic. Jobs was intense, demanding, and often very hard to work with. He had incredibly high standards. Not just for the product, but for people. He could be cold, sharp, even brutal with his words. But behind that edge, behind that intensity, was a deep fire. A burning belief that things could be better, simpler, more beautiful, more human. By 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, the first computer with a graphical interface that normal people could actually use. No technical manuals, no complicated commands, just click and go. It was bold, it was sleek, it was visionary. It was also expensive and hard to sell at first. And Steve, well, he was pushing people to the absolute edge, demanding perfection, demanding miracles. Eventually, the board of directors had enough. In 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from the company he co-founded. Can you imagine that? Being kicked out of your own company, the company you built from nothing, the company that was your baby. your dream, your life, most people would crumble. They would walk away. They would shrink back into the shadows. But Steve Jobs was not most people. And that's where this story truly begins. Because what happened after the fall, the years away from Apple, the wilderness years, are what shaped the comeback that would eventually change the entire world. Before we get there, though, let's zoom in on something deeper. Jobs' early obsession with simplicity. He believed that simplicity was the ultimate sophistication. That beauty and function could coexist perfectly. That technology should serve people, not confuse them. This obsession wasn't just design philosophy. It wasn't just marketing. It was spiritual. Jobs had studied Buddhism in India. He meditated daily. He believed in focus, in clarity, in stripping away the unnecessary. That mindset infused Apple's DNA from the very beginning. Even in those early days when resources were limited and everything was being built from scratch, Jobs insisted on perfection, on design, on the little things that most companies completely ignored, because to him they mattered. They shaped the user experience. They shaped the feeling. And that's something Steve Jobs understood better than almost anyone. Technology isn't just tools. It's emotion. It's storytelling. It's how it makes you feel when you open the box, when you touch the surface, when you hear that satisfying click. That attention to detail, that emotional intelligence would eventually change everything. But not yet. Because the man who would one day return and reinvent Apple still had to fall further, learn harder, and dream bigger than ever before. In Part 2, we'll follow Jobs after the crash, the years of exile, Next Computers, Pixar, and the slow-building storm of an incredible comeback. Stay with me, because this journey is far from over, and the best is yet to come. When Steve Jobs walked out of Apple in 1985, fired from the very company he helped build, he was just 30 years old. He had fame, he had money, he had recognition, but he no longer had purpose. And for a man like Steve Jobs, purpose was everything. It was the air he breathed, the reason he woke up every morning. Most people think failure is the end, the final chapter. Game over. But Jobs saw it differently. He saw it as the blank canvas he never had before. He later said something beautiful. He said, "The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again." And that beginner's mindset, the hunger, the risk, the freedom, would change absolutely everything. So what did Jobs do after getting fired? He started another company from scratch. It was called Next. This wasn't some revenge business. It wasn't a shallow comeback attempt or an ego project. Next was bold. It was elegant. It was ahead of its time. Jobs wasn't interested in making cheap computers. He wanted to build the perfect computer for universities and businesses. He wanted power, beauty, and simplicity all in one beautiful box. And he wanted it to be, in his words, insanely great. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Next's computers were gorgeous, absolutely stunning. Their design was flawless, their software was incredibly advanced, but their price? Ridiculously high. So high that hardly anyone could afford to buy them. The product failed commercially. It didn't sell. The company struggled. But the ideas behind it? Revolutionary. Next was a commercial failure that laid the foundation for Apple's entire future. The technology, the software, the operating system, it would all come back later. But during this same time, Jobs made another move. one that nobody saw coming. He bought a tiny animation studio from George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars. It was called Pixar. At the time, Pixar wasn't a movie company. It was just a group of brilliant engineers and artists building animation software. But Steve saw something deeper, a spark, a possibility, a future. He invested in them. He believed in them. He supported them through years of struggle. And after years of development, risk, and incredible patience, Pixar released Toy Story in 1995. It was the world's first full-length computer-animated movie, and it was a masterpiece. It changed cinema forever. It touched hearts around the world. It proved that animation could tell deeply human stories. Pixar exploded. The company became a cultural phenomenon, and Steve Jobs, the man who had once been fired from Apple, was now the CEO of the most innovative animation studio on Earth. He went from failure to fairy tale, from rejection to revolution. But behind the scenes, something else was stirring. Back at Apple, things weren't going well at all. The company had lost its direction. The products were clunky and confusing. The vision was blurry. The innovation had stopped. Apple was struggling, losing money, losing users, losing heart, losing its soul. And in a twist that felt almost cinematic, almost like destiny, Apple bought Next. Yes, Apple, the very company that once pushed Jobs out the door, acquired the company he built during his exile. And with that move, Steve Jobs was back. But this time he was different. Wiser, sharper, more patient. Still intense, yes, but focused like a laser beam. He didn't return as a bitter man looking for revenge. He didn't come back angry or hurt. He came back as a visionary ready to rebuild, ready to create, ready to change the world, and rebuild he did. Piece by piece, step by step. Jobs reshaped Apple's entire identity. He cut down the bloated product lines. He simplified everything. He brought back design, emotion, storytelling, and laser focus. He wasn't just fixing a company. He was preparing a revolution. And all of this, the pain, the loss, the learning, the Pixar magic, the Next experience, it shaped him. It refined him like fire refines gold. Jobs once said something profound. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. And looking back now, every failure mattered. Next, the firing, the exile, the struggle, nothing was wasted. It was all training, all refinement, all fuel for what was coming next. And now, he was ready. Ready to show the world what those dots could become when they finally connected. In Part 3, we'll step into Apple's golden era, the iMac. The iPod, the bold product decisions that made Steve Jobs not just a comeback story, but an absolute legend. Stay with me. The revolution is just beginning. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the company was bleeding. It had lost nearly everything: its direction, its brand identity, its reputation, even its soul. The world saw Apple as a sinking ship, a dying company, a has-been. But Jobs saw something else. He saw a spark waiting to be reignited, a flame that just needed oxygen. He didn't walk back in with fanfare or celebration. He walked in with absolute clarity. His first mission? Simplify. Apple had dozens of products at the time: printers, computers, accessories, gadgets, all cluttered, all confusing. Nobody knew what Apple stood for anymore. Jobs slashed the lineup brutally and without mercy. He drew a simple 2x2 grid on a whiteboard: consumer versus professional, desktop versus portable. That was it. Only 4 products. 4. He didn't want more. He wanted better. And that's where the magic started. In 1998, Apple released the iMac, a translucent, colorful desktop computer that looked like it came from the future. No floppy drive, one button, rounded corners, playful colors, Bondi blue, tangerine, grape. It was bold, it was different, it was fun, but it wasn't just about looks. The iMac was fast, affordable, and incredibly easy to use. It said to the world, technology doesn't have to be ugly or intimidating. Technology can be beautiful and joyful. And it worked. The iMac sold millions. It literally saved Apple from bankruptcy. It brought in a whole new generation of users who wanted not just a computer, but a lifestyle. Then came the next revolution. Jobs looked at the music industry and saw absolute chaos. People were downloading songs illegally from sites like Napster. CD sales were dying. Music was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So he built a solution, a complete ecosystem. First, iTunes, a digital music library that just worked. Simple, clean, beautiful. Then the iPod, a pocket-sized device that let you carry 1,000 songs in your hand, in your pocket. And finally, the iTunes Store, a way to buy individual songs for just 99 cents. Legally, cleanly, beautifully. The music industry laughed at first. They thought it wouldn't work. Then they watched Apple completely dominate. The iPod wasn't just a product, it became a culture. White earbuds became a fashion statement, a symbol. You could spot iPod users on the street. Apple was no longer just a computer company. It was cool, it was cultural, it was everywhere. And behind all of this, behind the polished devices, the sleek advertisements, the unforgettable keynote presentations, was Jobs' absolute obsession with design and simplicity. He would spend hours obsessing over a font, days debating the feel of a button, weeks refining the packaging. To Steve, the user's feeling was the product. If it didn't spark joy, wonder, or ease, it wasn't ready. It went back to the drawing board. He used to say, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works." That philosophy became Apple's DNA. It became the company's heartbeat. But here's what made it truly powerful. It wasn't just about technology. It was about humanity. Jobs wasn't building machines. He was creating tools that felt like magic, tools that fit into your life, into your pocket, into your story. And he did it with ruthless focus. He didn't chase every trend. He didn't try to please everyone. He didn't make products by committee. He built what he believed in, deeply, obsessively, passionately, and the world followed. By the early 2000s, Apple was on fire. The company was roaring back to life. But Steve wasn't done, not even close. He was already dreaming of the next leap, the next revolution, one that would change the way we communicate, the way we work, the way we play, the way we live. A device that would merge three things: the iPod, the phone, and the internet, all in one beautiful package. The world had no idea what was coming, but Steve Jobs did. In Part 4, we'll step into the iPhone era. The moment where Apple redefined the entire world again. The moment Steve Jobs proved that simplicity, vision, and courage could rewrite the rules of modern life. Stay tuned. The greatest leap is about to unfold. It was January 9th, 2007. The lights dimmed at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. The stage was silent. Anticipation filled the air, and Steve Jobs walked out in his signature black turtleneck and jeans. Calm, confident, like a magician holding the world's greatest secret. He looked out at the audience and said, Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. But that wasn't all. He teased the room, he played with them. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? He repeated it again and again, building the tension. Then the moment hit. These are not three separate devices. This is one device, and we are calling it the iPhone. The room exploded. What Jobs unveiled that day wasn't just a phone, it was a window into the future. No physical keyboard, a touchscreen that felt like science fiction. The ability to browse the real web, check emails, listen to music, watch videos, all in your pocket. And it looked absolutely beautiful. Thin, elegant, minimalist, perfect. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the design that changed the world. It was the experience. Jobs believed that the best technology should feel invisible. It should work naturally, intuitively, like an extension of your mind and fingers. And that's exactly what the iPhone did. It felt right. It didn't need a manual. You just picked it up and understood it. A child could use it. A grandmother could use it. This was no accident. Jobs had spent years fighting for that simplicity. He had pushed teams beyond their limits. He had rejected good ideas in search of great ones. He had delayed releases until every single detail was just right. And when the iPhone finally launched, it didn't just sell. It redefined everything. The way we talk, the way we listen to music, the way we take photos, the way we navigate cities, read the news, order food, book flights, run businesses, even fall in love. The iPhone didn't just change Apple, it changed us. It changed human behavior. It changed society. It created an entirely new economy. App stores, mobile developers, startups, platforms, social media, Uber, Instagram, Spotify. All of it became possible because of the iPhone. It turned Apple into the most valuable company on earth. And behind it all was that quiet obsession Steve had always carried: to make things that matter, to remove the unnecessary, to build tools that empower people to create, to connect, to dream. But let's not forget, Steve was never just building gadgets. He was crafting a philosophy, a way of thinking. He believed in the intersection of technology and the liberal arts, the union of science and humanity. He wanted machines that didn't just compute, they inspired. Devices that weren't just useful, they were beautiful. This was his genius. And it came from pain, from loss, from being kicked out of the very company he built and returning stronger, wiser, more focused than ever. That return wasn't just about profit, it was about purpose. And the iPhone was proof, but in the background, something darker was unfolding. Steve had been battling cancer since 2003, pancreatic cancer, a rare form. He tried every treatment, every diet, every possible way to fight it. And for years he kept going, product after product, innovation after innovation, keynote after keynote. He kept showing up, he kept delivering. One more thing, because that's who he was. A visionary who knew that time was limited, but whose dreams were absolutely limitless. In Part 5, we'll look at Steve's final chapter. Not just how he said goodbye, but how he left behind a blueprint for boldness, beauty, and belief in the impossible. Because sometimes the most powerful legacy isn't what you build, it's what you awaken in others. October 5, 2011. The world paused. Steve Jobs had passed away at the age of 56. And in that moment, across millions of screens, in boardrooms, classrooms, studios, and homes around the world, there was a quiet stillness. It felt like we had lost more than just a man. We had lost a symbol of what could happen when someone refuses to give up. A reminder that vision, when fueled by unshakable belief, becomes something unstoppable. But here's the deeper truth. Steve Jobs was never chasing immortality. He didn't want statues. He didn't want monuments in his name. He wanted to make a dent in the universe. And he did. Not by living forever, but by creating things that would. The iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, the Apple ecosystem. But more than the devices themselves, it was the mindset he left behind. The relentless pursuit of excellence. The courage to start again from zero. The discipline to say no 1,000 times just to say yes to the one thing that truly matters. The belief that even in a noisy, fast-moving world, simplicity wins, and that technology, when crafted with heart and soul, becomes more than metal and code. It becomes part of our lives, part of our stories, part of us. After Steve's death, people asked, can Apple survive without him? But maybe that's the wrong question, because Steve's greatest creation wasn't a product. It was a culture. He built a company and a philosophy where the bar is always high, where people obsess over the tiniest details, where beauty isn't a luxury, it's a responsibility, where innovation isn't a buzzword, it's a daily habit, a way of life. That DNA didn't die with him, it's still alive. In every Apple product. In every entrepreneur who risks starting something new. In every artist, coder, writer, leader, or dreamer who says, let's make it better. That's the real impact of Steve Jobs. He gave us permission to dream bigger, to believe that elegance and function can live together, to trust our intuition even when others doubt it. To start over if we must, but never ever settle. And maybe most of all, he showed us that failure is not the end, that sometimes getting fired from your own company is the very thing that pushes you to become who you were always meant to be. Steve once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward. And looking back now, the picture is crystal clear. A college dropout who studied calligraphy ends up creating the most intuitive computers in the world. A guy obsessed with design ends up revolutionizing 6 entire industries: computing, music, phones, animated films, digital publishing, and retail. A man told he was too difficult, too intense, too demanding, ends up becoming one of the most respected minds of a generation. It didn't happen by chance. It didn't happen by luck. It happened because Steve Jobs lived with urgency. He knew time was short. He once said, remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. And that's the final lesson, my friends. You don't need to be Steve Jobs to build something incredible, but you do need to care enough. Care enough to start, to keep going, to say no when others say yes, to be misunderstood, to fail forward, to think deeply, to work relentlessly, to believe, to look at the world and whisper, this could be better. Then go build it. That's how you honor the legacy of a man like Steve Jobs. Not by copying his life, but by unlocking your own. One vision, one bold idea, one comeback at a time. Because, like Steve said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And if you're still listening right now, that might just be you. So what did Steve Jobs really leave behind? Not just a company, not just products, but a standard, a way of thinking, A reminder that your failures don't define you. Your response to them does. He showed us that crazy ideas, when backed by belief and hard work and relentless focus, can change the entire world. And now it's your turn. Take that project, that dream, that setback, that fear, and ask yourself, what would happen if I refused to give up? What would happen if I believed in my vision the way Steve believed in his? Because, like Steve once said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Thank you so much for listening to the English Pod Zone. If this episode inspired you, please share it with a friend. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep growing together, one powerful story at a time. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next episode. Stay bold, stay curious, stay focused, and never ever stop learning. Until next time, my friends, keep dreaming, keep building, keep believing. The world is waiting for your one more thing.